The clip was short, but the fallout was huge. Jacksepticeye, strapped to a lie detector, asked if MrBeast had ruined YouTube. He said yes, and the internet lit up. To some, it sounded like jealousy. To others, it was a warning. The platform was changing, and not necessarily for the better. Jack explained that YouTube had shifted from fun and creativity to obsession with views and money. His words hung in the air, dismissed by some, echoed by others, and months later, when controversies around Beast games and questionable product launches came up, that one word, yes, suddenly felt a lot less like shade and more like prophecy. But Jack wasn't the first YouTuber to sound an alarm. Years earlier, in 2019, Markiplier went live and said something that at the time seemed strange. "I naturally distrust honey." Everyone else was cashing in on sponsorships, but Mark couldn't shake the feeling that something didn't add up. How can a company save people money, pay influencers millions, and still make a profit? His prediction that there would one day be a honey conspiracy sounded dramatic in the moment until 2025 rolled around and tech creators exposed exactly the issues Mark had worried about. Users weren't getting the best deals, creators were losing affiliate revenue, and the whole model looked built to mislead. What made Mark's stand so striking was that he willingly turned down easy sponsorship money in an era when almost every major creator was signing on. Fans later praised him for sticking to his gut instead of chasing a paycheck, pointing out how rare it is for someone at his level to take that kind of stand. And when the truth finally came out, Mark's honesty gave him even more credibility. In hindsight, his refusal to compromise wasn't just instinct, it became a blueprint for creators who want long-term trust over short-term gain. If Mark was cautious about money, PewDiePie was skeptical about something else entirely: Ryan's World. In 2017, he sat down to react to a headline claiming the 5-year-old could dethrone him as king of YouTube. At first it was jokes, but quickly it turned serious. He compared Ryan's setup to child stars pushed by parents, noticed suspicious engagement numbers, and pointed out the strangeness of a kid being coached for the camera. His mock skit, parents demanding more energy for the ad, was funny until you realized it wasn't far from reality. What struck Pewds most was the imbalance of power. A child at the center of a billion-dollar machine with no real say in the pace, the contracts, or the pressure. He worried openly about what growing up in that environment might look like, hinting that no amount of toys or cash could make up for lost privacy. At the time, many brushed it off as classic PewDiePie sarcasm, but years later, his instincts looked eerily accurate. With regulators stepping in, lawsuits brewing, and the ethical debate about kidfluencers gaining mainstream traction, Pewds' side-eye looked more like foresight than bitterness. That same theme, kids being pushed too hard, would come up again a year later when WoWvicky dropped a surprising video about her friend Lil Tay. Known for flexing cars and cash at the age of 10, Tay seemed like the ultimate clout-chasing prodigy. But Vicky said what few were willing to. Tay wasn't in charge. Her brother was calling the shots, feeding her lines, and pushing her to perform. "She's just a kid," Vicky said. "She doesn't know how to handle this." For once, the internet praised Vicky's honesty, and the truth about Tay's family came to light. Behind the viral clips was a child living a reality she never chose. Not all warnings were about exploitation, some were about illusion. Primitive technology channels were some of the most viral content on YouTube. Lone villagers carving huts, digging wells, building castles with nothing but sticks. Enter Polydactyl, who pressed pause and pointed out the inconsistencies: shovel marks in the dirt, excavator treads in the background, hardware tools mysteriously appearing in wild forests. His conclusion was blunt. These weren't survival builds, they were production teams staging rustic fantasy for clicks. Audiences didn't stop watching, but they started watching differently. Less as documentaries, more as entertainment. A small shift, but an important one. Knowing the trick doesn't always ruin the magic, but it does stop you from being fooled. And in many ways, that shift was just as valuable as exposing a scam. By pulling back the curtain, Polydactyl didn't destroy the genre, he reframed it. Viewers could still enjoy the artistry, the editing, and the final product, but without buying into the illusion that it was authentic survival. It was a reminder that YouTube thrives on blurred lines between fiction and reality, but those lines matter when trust is on the line. His warning helped the audience become more critical consumers, able to enjoy the spectacle while recognizing when they were being sold a fantasy. Warnings aren't always about content. They're sometimes about community. When the Sidemen prepared their 2025 charity football match, bots and scammers began selling fake tickets. Instead of staying silent, the Sidemen went public, telling fans not to buy from shady links. It wasn't glamorous, but it saved people from getting ripped off and reminded viewers that not every creator is chasing a dollar. For years, they've had to deal with scalpers turning a good cause into profit, but this time their PSA hit in time. It was one of the few times where influencer literally meant influence for good. What stood out most was how quickly their warning spread. Fans began sharing screenshots of fake listings, calling out shady sellers, and amplifying the sidemen's message across social media. In doing so, the community itself became part of the defense against scammers. It showed that audiences don't just passively consume content, they rally when creators they trust give them a reason to. And by protecting their supporters' wallets, the sidemen added another layer to their brand. Not just entertainers on the field, but guardians of the very people filling the stadium. Of course, the biggest shadow in this whole story still comes back to Mr. Beast. Beyond Jack's comments, others began raising eyebrows. Chris Broad openly questioned why Jimmy would align with people like Logan Paul, asking how someone so savvy could make such reckless choices. He also broke down the creator life cycle of a rising star who launched a podcast, a crypto scheme, and a downfall all in the span of months. His point was simple. When the biggest names on YouTube normalize questionable partnerships, the next generation takes notes. Chris ended his rant with a Christmas message. Choose carefully who you watch, because if the people with the most reach don't have a moral compass, the whole platform suffers. And then there are warnings that feel heavier than all the rest combined. In 2007, TJ Kirk, the amazing atheist, uploaded a video about people glorifying the Columbine shooters on YouTube. He named accounts, linked profiles, and said flat out, "These are your warning signs." Months later, one of the users he flagged carried out a horrific school attack in Finland. When TJ returned, he wasn't proud, just devastated. "You criticized me for saying it, and now here we are." His warning was ignored, and the consequences were unthinkable. It stands as one of the darkest examples of what happens when red flags are in plain sight, but no one wants to act. What made TJ's words cut even deeper was that they weren't vague. They were specific, detailed, and actionable. He wasn't making an abstract prediction, he was pointing directly at the very profiles that would later be tied to tragedy. That's why his frustration afterward felt so raw. It wasn't hindsight bias, it was foresight squandered. Many viewers later admitted they brushed it off as edgy ranting at the time, only to realize too late that he had practically spelled out what was coming. It remains a haunting reminder of how costly it can be to ignore uncomfortable truths. Looking back, these stories form a strange timeline of YouTube's growing pains. A streamer distrusts a sponsorship everyone else cashes in on. A comedy titan mocks a toy channel only to be proven right years later. A controversial influencer unexpectedly defends a child. A commentary nerd notices tire tracks no one else bothered to pause and see. A charity event interrupted not by scandal, but by scams. A travel vlogger begging viewers to stop rewarding bad partnerships. And a creator screaming into the void, pointing at danger before it spilled into the real world. What connects them all is how ordinary the warnings seemed at first. None of them arrived like breaking news. They were side comments, skits, or rants that blended into the noise of daily uploads. Yet over time, those throwaway moments became the clearest guideposts for understanding the platform's evolution. Each clip is like a breadcrumb, pointing to the bigger picture. That YouTube isn't just shaped by the content we celebrate, but also by the alarms we ignore. The irony is that the most important truths often sounded like jokes or jealousy until time proved otherwise. The through line isn't cynicism, it's awareness. Warnings rarely arrive in bold letters. They come as gut feelings, offhand jokes, rants dismissed as jealousy, or PSAs that feel obvious until you realize they weren't. And while not every warning proves true, the ones that do stick with you. Because on YouTube, as in life, it's not the noise that matters. It's whether you were listening before it was too late. And that's the paradox of the platform. The very clips we scroll past, laugh at, or ignore often hold the clearest insights about where things are headed. A creator's skepticism can feel like negativity until hindsight reframes it as foresight. What separates those moments isn't just accuracy, it's timing, courage, and the willingness to say what no one else wants to hear. YouTube thrives on hype, but it's the warnings buried beneath the hype that often tell the real story. And if history has shown us anything, it's that the audience's future often depends on who paid attention in the present.